The next thing, and maybe something that's critical to many of us utilizing Schoology, we're going to talk about the test and quiz feature. And I do want to point out there are two different ways of assessing your students, if you want to call them a test or a quiz. And if you see, we have the right under the add assignment, we can go add test or quiz or add assessment. The test and quiz feature has been with us since we rolled out Schoology 4 or 5 years ago. The add assessment is this new feature that Schoology is adding, which we will go through, um, but it doesn't have the same features that adding a test or a quiz does as of yet. So we're going to look into the first test and quiz that we have added to our sample class. As always, we have our naming convention here. I can always click on the gear icon, hit edit if I want to change any of the values. So this gives me my total point value, the category, grading period. If I want to individually assign it, publish to students, if I want to see grading statistics, and then if I want to enable or disable comments to students. So we're going to just hit save, and now we're going to click into our sample assessment. So currently, I want you to focus on a couple of things off the bat. We have our naming convention. We have submissions disabled, that is by default set. We have our view statistics, our grade info. So if we wanted to see what category it fits in, and if we want to, again, edit, unpublish, and then this nice feature is if you build your own assessment and you want to save it to your resources, this is where you're going to do that. So you always default to the questions page at first because it goes, what do you want to add? And you have your basic feature set. So true, false questions, multiple choice, ordering, short answer, fill in the blank, and matching. A couple I want to highlight. So let's say we're adding a multiple choice question and saying, so if I ask my students, how many Big Ten teams are there? And I said 10, 11, 12, 14. Once I have these questions in there, then what this allows me to do is I'll say the correct answer is 14 because obviously the Big Ten has, as you would expect, 14. An interesting feature about both the test and quiz and the assessment feature is you can add feedback to any of your multiple choice questions if you want your students to get feedback responses. So if they know the right answer or they forgot. So if you wanted to use this as a check-in point, and you want to give your students reasons why the answers are right or wrong, you can add feedback. Now I select hide and it will go there or not. Again, if you wanted to say incorrect response field for any incorrect response field, you can say try again, and then the correct response field. If you want them to see what they got for the right answer, you can say nice work. You can always have the option to randomize choices, allow for partial credit. So if there's more than one option that's correct, you can do that. And then you can specifically time a question. How many points is this worth going towards the total grade? And then we want to go to create the question. So now we see we have one question there. For many of us, if we're transitioning to teaching online, maybe we want our students to work out a problem. So in order to do that, the easiest way that I found is to add a short answer question. You might be saying, Mr. Swenson, why are we adding a short answer question if we want students to submit work? So the nice thing about a short answer question is, let's say, please demonstrate a confidence interval. So let's say we want, please demonstrate our picture form. We have our rich text editor. If we wanted, we can add audio. So we're used to seeing this. It's across Schoology. What we want to add below is, if they're typing, you're going to see character limits, allow rich text answers for students, allow video or audio answers for students, and time question. Okay, this is the feature that we want to enable to allow rich text answers for students. If you hover it over it, this allows students to use the simple version of the rich text editor when creating their response. Why do we want our students to be able to see this exact same look? Is because if they're using something like Notability or scanning work that they had done, what they're going to end up doing is going to insert content and then image or media. This allows our students to do work or write music or draw a picture and submit it to an assessment piece, in this form a test or quiz, that we can add. Additionally, if you have created a rubric or want to create a rubric for a specific question, this is the available place you can do that. So we hit create question. Now we've got our two questions. Let's say we want to use two questions for this. Do note that our test is worth 100 points. So even though each question is worth 1 point, it's going to then factor in when grading this, if they got it right or wrong, 100%, 50%, or 0%. So they will only see the point total. The next important thing that when we're setting up a test or quiz, we want to look at the settings. Here's where you place your instructions. The toggle below tells you if you want to enable your test or quiz or enable in a time frame until a certain time, and then it will lock, and enable from start to finish, or just turn it off right now. You can add a time limit, and then if you do add a time limit, it says how many minutes on there. On the student view, it gives them great anxiety, and they'll see a countdown timer in the bottom right-hand corner when they're taking this. The number of attempts, which also differentiates this from an assessment, where if you wanted to, you can make this an unlimited practice type, and they're just seeing a bunch of questions. If you want the questions to be randomized, not just the options in and of itself, but if you want the order of the questions to randomly appear, especially if you're using something like a question bank, this allows you to randomize all of the questions that you're dealing with. Paging is saying, do I want to see all of these questions, let's say 20 questions all in one page, or do I want to see one question per page? Next, if we want to see a language keyboard, if we're one of our modern languages or Spanish, we can enable that keyboard for our students. Question review allows after they hit submit, it will say, do you want to review any of these questions? Normally I have that toggled off. And then resumable, yes or no. If for some reason they back out of the quiz or test or close it or switch applications, do you want them to be able to start or stop this test as is? And then the last option allows your students at the end, when they submitted theirs, can they see their work? But if you say view submissions, they can only see which questions they got right or wrong. They won't see the correct answer. The third option says yes, they can view their submissions with what is the correct answer. So if you're limiting to one attempt, you might want to let students see the correct answers, but also know that they'll potentially take a screenshot and share it with their friends. So what I highly suggest is they can view their submissions and see what they got right or wrong, but not seeing what the correct answer is. So for my purposes, students are asking questions about the questions they got wrong. Last bit, in the settings, we have short answer and essay questions if you want to limit the number of lines a student can enter or see. And then once you're done, we're going to hit Save Changes. Now, the next tab, we can preview. This is exactly what a student would see. So it will give their instructions. Currently, we have none. We have one attempt on this, and we're going to hit Start New Attempt. So we have our multiple choice question, and then we have our short response question. This also allows us to see what the rich text editor looks like on the student end. So they get bold and italics and stylizing, subscripts and superscripts, but you really would like to highlight that they want to add an image or media. Just like we can do throughout Schoology, once they click this, they can attach a file. And this is a way you can get around the option of not having students be able to just submit a video or image response in this test and quiz category. The next page, I'm going to hit leave because I don't really need to see this, is our student results, and then any comments. So if you disable this by default, you won't see any comments. But if you have comments enabled, this will have a running list of what your students are asking you about this assessment. If you want your students to be able to take a test, you need to be able to enable submissions. By default, once you have something set up, you can have it published to students, but until you enable submissions, they will not be able to do anything with your test or quiz. The last idea that I think is critical and allows you to save a lot of time and energy and effort when it comes to a test or quiz is to utilize the idea of question banks. Now, I will go into far more detail on how to create a question bank, but for now, think of it like a book provided bank of question, 150 questions, and you want to access those. So if we go to, let's just rewind that again. So if we go to add a question and we go to from question banks, now it gives us the option. Do we want to do individual questions from a given question bank that we've loaded, or do we want a random selection of question banks? I often lean into this idea of random questions. So as you can see, all of these things currently are my resources. And on each one of them has a topic in my pre-calculus class that says the question bank that I've preloaded with 50 questions. I can select that question bank and it will say, okay, I am randomly assigning questions from this 50 question bank. It'll say, how many do you want? Let's say 10 or 12. And then how many points is each question worth? Let's say they're 2 points apiece. Now, I have expanded out the number of possibilities a student has to see the number of questions, just like a homework assignment through a test or a quiz, by using the power of randomization and utilizing this pre-made thing that comes with our textbook. So we have our random questions here, and in addition, we have our randomization order on. So I have 2 different points where it's changing the order in which they appear in terms of this list and the order that they appear in each question bank. The beautiful thing is you can add as many question banks as you want. So if I go to add questions and I wanted to choose a different question bank, I could probably pull from, let's say, chapter 2. This only has 16 questions, and I'll go select the question bank. Let's say I want 4 from this, then these questions are worth 5 points apiece. Since I've already gone ahead and made those question banks, and I know what questions are in them, I am allowing the computer to randomize. One more time, if I go from a question bank and I go to individual questions, now I can go to one of my question banks. I can click inside the folder, and I can see exactly which questions I want to use. So I can auto-select from the 76, just like I did before, or I can individually choose which options I'm going to use. With addition, you can click on the option type and see what the answers the students are going to see is. Give them point value. Let's say this is worth 2, this is worth 1. And I go to add questions. And now those 2 questions, not the entire bank, are added to my quiz. So now I have 20 questions instead of 2. This is all leveraging back-end technology, which you will need a separate set of software and hopefully a textbook that provides you with question banks. But even still, if you wanted to make your own question banks and you wanted to pool them with your department, you can add a question bank. Let's say we go to random, and instead of from your own personal resources, you can go to a group resource. We'll go more into everything that you can find on resources in a second. So we can see that I have a math department group, math department DCHS. Here are my shared question banks provided from Miss J and Mrs. Kirsch. I can see geometry and period calculus and calculus. Maybe I want to go to calculus, and then I want to go to applications of calculus, and I can see each section, how many questions there are. I can select that and go, okay, how many questions do I want from 4.3.3? If I know what those question types are, let's say I want 4 of them, they're worth 1 point apiece. Now I'm able to build an assessment from a wide variety of questions, and every student is going to get a unique set of questions.